came to the path of Bhakti Yoga in year 2006 while finishing off his university studies. From there, he joined the Bhakti Center in New York, lived as a monk, brahmachari monk, for many years. She is also a student and initiated disciple of His Holiness Satyananda Swami. While staying at the Bhakti Center, he deeply studied the self, the ego, and the mind, gaining a new level of empathy for his own struggles and the struggles of others. Steeped in the knowledge of his monastic training, he now invests his energies at Upbuild consulting organization, in which he is designing curriculum. He teaches at workshops and also writes and coaches executives in leadership development, all based on the teachings of primarily the Bhagavad Gita. Hariprasad thrives off the light bulbs his clients experience, and they gain profound insights about themselves and their relationships and become committed to taking responsibility for their actions and to find the courage to make themselves vulnerable. For over 10 years, he's helping leaders develop strong practice of self-awareness that will continue to serve them throughout their lives. He believes the key is a certain fearlessness to truly see oneself, along with the humble eagerness to work on oneself. He graduated from the New York University Tisch Film and Television Program. Hariprasad has been a part of workplaces that span from the American Red Cross to Marvel Studios. Prior to co-founding Upbuild, he was a writer, director, actor, and a producer of short films. Now, we welcome Hariprasad Prabhu to our program. Over to you, Hariprasad Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I am so grateful and honored to be with each of you. Thank you so much, Guru Prasad Prabhu, for inviting me, for giving me this chance to hopefully benefit myself by sharing something that I know I need to imbibe and that I would love to offer to you in the hopes that it is beneficial for you as well. I'm also very excited to see Lakshmi Moni Prabhu, a very dear friend and mentor, somebody that I admire deeply. And yeah, I can't believe I get to see you at this time. Thank you for being here. Please, I need your blessings, and Guru Prasad Prabhu, your blessings. Thank you. And all the blessings of the devotees present. Thank you very much. So I wanted to just start with a short bhajan song of Jaya Radha Madhava. And I also wanted to request that those of you who are able, would you kindly turn on your video? I understand that not everybody will be able to, and of course we're also streaming on Facebook, so no problem. But for those of you that can, it will be helpful just to feel a little more connected in the time that we have together. Thank you so much. And it's great to see my mom and dad there. Very, very blessed to have you. Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Bihari. Thank you. So I was asked by Guru Prasad Prabhu, who is very much like a father to me, to speak on the subject of, or I was suggested, I should say, to potentially speak on the subject of spiritual community. And that is a subject which is very dear to my heart. It's actually the purpose of our organization, Upbuild, is to create spiritual community. So this is also a program that is dedicated to His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, who recently departed from our world. He had COVID-19 and left us with his legacy, a very, very great soul, somebody who I believe is perfectly self-realized and who has so much to share about spiritual community. My hope is that this will be an offering to him that will be pleasing and will channel his spirit and his teachings. So my aim today is really just one thing. It's to persuade you of a very tangible opportunity. And that opportunity is that together we can become self-realized souls. Together we can become self-realized souls, and we can make exceptional advancement toward that highest of goals, even tonight. I believe that this is true. And it must be real for us. If we want to actually reach that goal, it has to be real. We don't want it to remain ethereal, some distant concept. There has to be some tangibility, some conviction that this can happen. So I want to ask you, are you ready? Are we ready to get closer to realizing who we truly are at the deepest level, this level of the soul? I hope you are. I am trying. And once again, if anybody feels comfortable to turn on your video, you are most welcome so that I can see you. If not, no worries. Good. So just a couple of prayers here. Om Jnana Timidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarino. Vanchakalpa Tirubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshitarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Wonderful. So let us begin with an image. So there's the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the most recent incarnation of Krishna, who came in the 15th century and spread the teachings of self-realization in an unprecedented way. There, in his biography, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a section in the Madhya Lila, chapter 7, titled, "The Lord Begins His Tour of South India." And what's happening here is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has gone to South India to spread his teachings of how to awaken the soul and how to awaken pure love for God. And he's chanting these mantras, the holy names of God, like we've been chanting. And he's awakening countless people, and he's going from village to village to village with this express purpose. And it's like an unimaginable miracle. People are being changed left and right. They have nothing to do with the person that they were prior to meeting him. They are lighting up. Something is unrecognizable about them, because while they are currently embodied, while they are in this particular encasing, and they have their minds, somehow deep down, everything else has changed. And that has an effect on the mind and body too. The thinking changes, and a luster in the body can be seen. Have you seen somebody who's truly fulfilled, who is experiencing a depth of satisfaction ongoingly? They look different. It shows up, you can tell. There's a kind of, it's often said in the scriptures, an effulgence about them, something that is light and that then is contagious and can light up others. This was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was effulgence personified. He was a golden form. He was known as Gauranga, one whose limbs are made of gold. They're golden in complexion. And he had this incredible spirit that just could not be contained, where he would light up other people, whoever he met, and especially when he chanted divine mantras that were geared specially towards awakening the soul and allowing us in this self-same body to realize who we are beneath the outer layers, to realize that in the heart, we have an identity that has been buried for countless lifetimes. To tap into that and live as that identity, who we are in eternity. That is what he came for. And he was successful beyond our wildest imagination. So he would go from village to village, just chanting, Hari, Hari, Hari Bol, Bolo Hari. Chant the names of God. Chant the names that will awaken us to our eternal connection to the one who actually reveals who we are in our relationship with him. So he would chant very enthusiastically, and then he would waste no time. He would go off to the next place because he had a big vision. He didn't want to just change one village, certainly not one person, right? But not even one village. He wanted to go from village to village to village. And he wanted to see ultimately that this entire planet would be awakened, would be lit up, would become divinely effulgent based on the embodiment of who we really are. So he exhibited what it means to have a perfectly spiritual community, a thriving, vibrant, extraordinary spiritual community. where hearts were being changed. And actually, the key here, what can't be lost in this, is that he actually didn't do it all himself. So in some way, he did do it all himself because it was all his influence. But he also believed in this principle that one candle can light another candle. And then that candle that has been lit by the original candle has the capacity to light up an infinite number of other candles. So when he would leave a village, he was confident that he didn't have to be there to make sure that every single individual would become self-realized. He could actually count on the effect of one person that he had transmitted his knowledge and his realization, his awakening to. And that one person would be capable of lighting up countless others like that candle. So he was very efficient and very humble in his grand vision of transforming the world, and he left it to others to participate. And that is a very, very powerful example. And it shows that also there is a role. You know, we all are, in this day and age, we're very preoccupied now with the buzzword of purpose and what's my purpose? Do I have a mission, right? That's a good thing. But really, we see what a mission and a purpose can look like on a level that is absolutely other from what, you know, we tend to talk about these days. It's so deep, it's so rich, it has to be tasted. So with that image, I want you to keep that with you. And from there, I want to use that as a springboard to explore a little bit more about what we can gain from the idea of spiritual community. And of course, ISKCON Ottawa, which is your community, our community here right now, and is kindly hosting us. That is a powerful example. There are so many opportunities just in this Sangha, in this gathering, in this connection, and what can come from the myriad other opportunities to come together as a Sangha of ISKCON Ottawa. So what makes it possible to have such an extraordinary transformative spiritual community as what we see in the lifetime of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? What is behind that? What makes it possible? I like to think of it in terms of three broad components, and then we can break that down a little bit further. But the three broad components to this spiritual community are, first, a shared goal. It's pretty self-explanatory. We need to all be on the same page, and there needs to be a purpose for us coming together. Yes, find your purpose. So there has to be that shared sense of purpose. Otherwise, we would all be fragmented, doing our own thing. We wouldn't need to come together. And it's very problematic when we come together anyway, because we're all on totally different wavelengths. And that happens a lot. And it happens in very subtle ways, very regularly. And we're not even immune as a spiritual organization at all. It happens because we all have egos and we all have our own conditionings. So we want to be aware of that. We need to put that spiritual goal first and foremost and make sure that it's the same as one another's goal. So that's first, right? Shared spiritual goal. Second, there must be the sincerity individually and collectively to strive toward that goal. It cannot be a theory, once again. It has to be something that we move toward, that is valuable enough that we are willing to actually move ourselves to do something about it. If it remains something we are content just to talk about, we have failed. That is not a spiritual community. That is a nice idea. That is a fairy tale which might serve us in some other lifetime. So We need to be willing to move, to put our money where our mouth is. There has to be practice. There has to be service. There has to be an active nature and a connection to the ideals that we're talking about, and an individual capacity in which we're willing to approach them that is mutually beneficial. It's not self-interest. Clear? So that's number 2, is we have to strive individually and collectively to reach that goal. Number 3, this is the most mysterious of the components of spiritual community. There must be grace, because I cannot do it on my own. I am dependent on people with higher realization, higher knowledge, higher experience, and I am dependent on the grace of God, higher power that actually makes everything possible. Because who am I? And all of the teachings of the sacred texts corroborate this idea. Even 12-step programs are phenomenally successful because of the underpinning. I mean, it's amazing. I've seen many people that have gone to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, atheistic, and come out believing in a higher power because they learned to depend, to surrender, and they didn't know who they were depending on, who they were surrendering to. They did it because they were forced out of necessity, that their lives were being ruined, and they had to just put their faith in the fact that other people had come out well by engaging in this process, right? By depending on the realization of more experienced persons, and by putting their maybe very supple, tender faith in God. And they experienced some grace. So many of us have had an experience. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have something that was pushing us onward, that was making us feel, you know what? If God isn't real, if Krishna isn't real, then life doesn't really make sense. I mean, how could I explain all that's happened to me? How can I explain how we've all met each other, right? And maybe we have different levels of conviction in that, but there's something there, some shraddha, some ado shraddha, or initial faith that has brought us to think, you know what, at least there's something worth exploring. And we need to grow that faith, because we also don't want to be embarrassed that, after 40 years of practice, or 20 years of practice, or 5 years of practice, I still don't know if Krishna is really there, or if I'm blocked from him. I know he's there, but I can't seem to move forward in my relationship with him. So we want to be very receptive to that grace, and we want to challenge ourselves to open up for that and see what might be getting in the way. So grace is the third component, and it really hinges on the first 2. Number 1, again, being that we have a shared goal. Number 2, that we're willing to move towards that goal. And then that we are opened up to receive grace. It's not all about us. We can get our egos out of the way and be moved. So, hope this is clear. Any questions about this? Great. So then, what are the building blocks that are needed for each of these components to manifest successfully? Because there's a little bit more to it. So we're going to look at this in terms of 5 different building blocks that are essential for us to realize a shared goal, move towards it, and receive grace. Number 1, introspection. We need to be able to find in our hearts that we genuinely believe in this goal. I can't tell you how many times I've experienced that we're kind of here by entropy. We're here because we found ourselves in this situation, and it seemed like a good thing to do, at least at one point. And, now I'm here and I've been doing this for some time. And so I think I should stay in the game. That is not a strong enough reason for making spiritual advancement or being a part of a spiritual community. That will not suffice in the long term. we tend to be influenced by social considerations instead of spiritual considerations. This is a massive, massive dilemma. And I think if we introspect, we might find that there are tinges of that subtly in us, right? And we need to remove that. It's not bad to have social desires. It's not bad to surround ourselves with people that we like. We'll get into that. That's very, very good. That's needed. But that can't be the driving force, because that won't get us to the destination. That can be spiritualized, and then it becomes a worthwhile driving force. But in and of itself, that is not enough. Does this make sense? I've heard my spiritual master, His Holiness Satchidananda Maharaj, say that the purpose of ISKCON, the purpose of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, is simply to provide a group setting where we can all make advancement toward understanding our individual relationship with God. To the extent that we are recognizing and uncovering our unique individual relationship with God, to that extent, ISKCON has been successful, where we've used it successfully. We've used, not used in a bad way, but we've taken advantage of, we've capitalized on the opportunity of this organization. So that has to be at the heart of things. And that requires introspection to make sure that I'm really in it. I'm fully there. I want to recognize who I am. I want to uncover my spiritual identity beyond this mind and this body, beyond even the name that I have right now, Hariprasad Das. That is a good spiritual name by the grace of my guru. But as he told me yesterday, that may not be my name for eternity even. Right? That we have another identity. There's something that we haven't yet accessed. So I'm reminded of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, who achieved the greatest heights of self-realization and was such a phenomenal example of a person who lived the ideals of Krishna consciousness and spread them in community, who created spiritual communities almost effortlessly, if not for the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, but so effective. And what he said when he was passing, he unfortunately left us, but these great souls, they never really leave. Their soul is present, their spirit is with us, and their teachings are with us, which is incredible. And he said, as he was preparing to leave, that I'm not Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And when I first heard that, I was a little bit jolted. I thought, but wait a minute, you're self-realized in my book. So if you're not who your spiritual name is right now, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, and a sannyasi, a leader of the spiritual society, then wow, what does that say? And I realized there's even more. There's more than we can see. So we have to be able to introspect. We have to want to go that deep. And even when we're doing really well on the path, as exemplified by such an extraordinary soul, still wanting to go deeper and figure out, who am I really? So introspection is number one. That is really essential. Number two is knowledge. We need the appropriate knowledge that will make us fixed in realization. If we don't have knowledge of the soul, if we don't have knowledge of our identity, we have nothing to go off of. The sacred texts of all traditions are really aimed at equipping us with the tools and the reveal of what's going on beneath the surface. What is the ultimate reality, and how can we engage with that? How can we connect with that? How can we leave the phenomenal world behind and live a rich inner life? As Jesus said, build your treasures not in this world, but in the next. And the kingdom of God lies within. There's a kind of richness that can only be accessed in our hearts. So knowledge is necessary. We actually recited a prayer, Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. It means I was born in the darkness of ignorance. Why? Because I had no sense that I'm a spirit soul. I had no sense that I have anything but this mind and body. And my spiritual master has opened my eyes, or is opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Knowledge is that candle that we're talking about. Mahaprabhu, when he went from village to village, he was giving knowledge. He was teaching, and in certain cases, the teaching was just his mantra, which was laden with all spiritual knowledge. It was perfectly jam-packed with spiritual knowledge. That is the mystery of a mantra, that it has so much more to it than meets the eye. It is like a knowledge bomb, a spiritual knowledge bomb that can awaken us, right? So knowledge is crucial. That's number 2. Number 3 is care. We need to experience that this is benefiting us, that there are persons who are living the life of the soul, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. The world is better for it. Our lives are better for it. Because if we see that people are introspecting and they're taking in all this knowledge, but they're not very nice, what message does that send, right? There needs to be care. There needs to be a sense of affection and connection. And we know the soul is craving that. The soul is constantly hankering for loving connection. And knowledge must be in the service of that loving connection with Krishna, with God, and with all living beings who are part and parcels of God. We all have a relationship. We're all brothers and sisters here. What is the use of the knowledge that does not expose that truth? That is not real knowledge. I'm reminded of Srila Prabhupada, my guru's guru, and Lakshmi Mani Prabhu, and Guru Prasad Prabhu's guru, and his Nectar of Devotion, which inspired me so much. A beautiful, beautiful book where in the introduction, he really reached my heart with his words that, you know, we're all looking for this expansive, most expansive love. And we're all looking to do good to the greatest extent. And, you know, it starts with, we have our self-interest, and then if we become more conscious and more in tune with the laws of the spiritual reality, then we maybe care about our immediate family. And then if we go beyond that, we become much more in tune, then we're thinking about our community. And then beyond that, we're thinking about society at large, humanity. And then at the highest level, we're thinking of all living beings, not even just human beings, but we feel a responsibility to every living being. That is what spiritual knowledge aims at. It's this incredible sense of connection and care. And if you meet a great soul, you cannot help but be overwhelmed by the experience of their care, of their affection. His Holiness Bhakti Chara Maharaj was a real paragon of incredible affection. The first time that I ever met him in 2006, or maybe 2007, I believe, I was in Washington, D.C. for a talk that Radhanath Swami Maharaj was giving, very, very dear mentor to me and great, great soul. And Bhakti Chara Maharaj was just speaking a word after Radhanath Maharaj's talk. And afterwards, I had already known that I wanted to meet Bhakti Chara Maharaj because I had heard so many wonderful things about him. And I had understood that he was somebody who was really at this height of self-realization. That was made clear to me, and it was confirmed by his presence, the way that he spoke. the way he carried himself. It was just something clicked. It was clear. You could see it. The luster, right? The way it shows up in the body, the incredible sense of fulfillment that is contagious. So I was, my mentor at the time, who had first introduced me to my spiritual path, Hariprasad Prabhu, he had introduced me to Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and I got to offer my respects to him and offer some appreciation of him. And I felt very humbled going before such an amazing personality. And what he did was, he was wearing a garland, a beautiful garland that was given to him. And he took it off and he put it on me and he smiled at me. And there was such a radiance to his smile. It was so otherworldly and it was so sweet that I was just, my heart was racing. And when the garland hit my shoulders, I felt like a kind of electricity. And then he embraced me. I'm a total stranger. He doesn't know anything about me at all. And he just embraces me as if I'm his son. And I mean, it brought tears to my eyes. I mean, can you imagine what it's like to, I want to be in his shoes. I want to know what it's like to see that stranger the way that he was seeing me. That is exceptional. And I know that it's not just me, because there are countless stories of similar things. And I will never forget that encounter, that one, probably 3-minute encounter. That will stay with me for the rest of my life, probably beyond. So what an extraordinary opportunity to follow in the footsteps of great souls like that, to recognize that if we take on this spiritual vision, the kind of care that the soul is craving can be exponentially spread throughout the world. And God knows this world needs that. Every living being is craving that. But right now, where we can't even really hug each other in most parts of the world, or in many parts of the world, I mean, it's insane. And the reason for all of this madness, all of the corruption, all of the bereftness of consciousness, all of the selfishness and greed and egotism and lack of responsibility. I mean, we really sorely need an antidote, and fast, because the world just got shut down. That's pretty serious, right? And we know about the climate change, the impending crisis that this planet is facing. We don't have a lot of time to rectify these things. And we think that material solutions and technologies will help. I hope they do, but it will require a massive shift in consciousness even to make good on those things. And those are really not the key tools. We first need to care. We first need to tap into a higher sense of connection with every living being that brings out that care naturally, where it's not an effort. So that is number 3, the building block of care. We have introspection, knowledge, and care. So if we have those 3 things, then inspiration is a natural result. That's number 4. Knowledge, introspection, knowledge, and care, they make us inspired. And we need that inspiration. That's our fuel, right? I think that speaks for itself. Finally, number 5 is experience. Again, we don't want this to be theoretical. Of course, if we have these 4 things, there will be an experience. And even if we tap into 1, 2, 3, in any capacity, there's some experience. But we want a fuller, richer experience. We want to know for a fact that we are souls. We don't want to have bought into a dogma. That is my nightmare. It would drive me nuts if one day I woke up and I had to ask myself, well, wait a minute. how do I know that this is for real? What I've just devoted the last 14 years of my life to, now it's 14 years, God forbid it's even later. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the right thing. It sounds good. It's probably helpful, but yeah, I don't know. That is frightening. There has to be experience, and that experience has to increase and increase and increase. We have to have a kind of conviction that is not based on, well, you know, this is the right thing to say, or the scriptures say this, or, you know, my guru once said this. It has to be for me also. Otherwise, we're not doing justice to the scriptures. We're not doing justice to our gurus. Do we think that our teachers who want to impart everything to us want us to be so stunted and just, you know, not have any realization of our own? They exist to pour their realizations onto us, and we have to receive that. So there must be experience. But if we focus on 1, 2, and 3, then the inspiration will come, and the inspiration will fuel that experience. And then we can really, really impact the world. So a spiritual community needs to be based on these 3 components, and then these 5 building blocks that make up the components, that make it possible for these components to be successfully transmitted. Does that make sense? Any questions about this paradigm? Okay, good. So a reality check. Is it possible for us today? I mean, I think I maybe answered my own question a couple of times here, but I want to ask it again and really press on it. You know, we looked at the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We looked at an incarnation of Krishna, and we saw the kind of miracles. And maybe it's not so clear to us that that is super relevant right now. That we can, I mean, it's easy to get into the daily grind. I know for myself, like I face burnout regularly. It's just it's so difficult for me to live in the spiritual, on the spiritual platform. I suspect that I'm not alone in that, from the things that I've heard from my friends, from my, yeah, from others. It is hard in this world. To live a spiritual life in the material world is not easy. We will be tested, we will be challenged, we will find our conditioning just overwhelms us, overcomes us. So, you know, it's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, if Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were in the room with me, that would be one thing. Then we can talk about this kind of blossoming spiritual community, and I'll buy into that. But what about right now? You know, I know myself. I know that I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be in so much anxiety, and I'm going to have a million things that I need to do, and it's going to be impossible. And I can't even respond to all my emails, and I feel like a failure. Just speaking my own heart to you. So how is this really going to affect us? Are we kidding ourselves? Are we just talking a big game? That's a real question. I don't know. Did anybody have any answer to that question?
I
Yeah.
think you are speaking for everybody else, Hariprasad Prabhu. You are speaking for everybody else. You are not speaking for only yourself.
What's that?
What you said just now,
Yeah.
is actually for applicable to everybody else. So you are speaking for collectively for all of us.
You're very, very kind, very encouraging as always. But no, you can't make this stuff up. I'm being very, very honest with you. So, okay, yes, it's true that in the case of Mahaprabhu, he directly empowered all of these villagers, and he transformed the face of India, and the consciousness of the world in a way, because it was just so unrestrictedly powerful of a spiritual effect, and it was captured in sacred texts that would serve to awaken us even now. So he empowered all these villagers with those 5 building blocks of introspection, knowledge, care, inspiration, experience in one fell swoop. He just did it. Yet, this is indeed still happening today, thanks to Srila Prabhupada, as our dear Prabhupada disciples can attest to. They can really speak to this, that it is happening. Prabhupada didn't, talk about spilling so much blood, sweat, and tears. Prabhupada said, just to make one pure devotee or one self-realized soul, he had to spill buckets and buckets of blood. So intense. I mean, he suffered heart attacks and, many near-death experiences. And as an old man, tried to do the impossible. He was told that he was going to kill himself before he boarded the Jaladut from India to the United States, just to build spiritual community, just to create this international society for Krishna consciousness, which we are here because of, we are dependent on. He was told he's a fool, he's going to kill himself. 70 years old. He tried to start this. I mean, this is like unthinkable, right? But he didn't do that just to have it peter out and die. That was nowhere a part of his vision. He also, like Mahaprabhu, had a grand vision. And we know that succession planning is important, right? You can't, otherwise, something will cave eventually. As strong as it may be in the present moment, it will cave eventually. So Prabhupada understood this. And he was the only one of all of his god brothers. So all of his fellow disciples of the great Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, of all of them, he was the only one, and perhaps the only person contemporary to him who believed in a certain verse from another biography of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that is the Chaitanya Bhagavad. Pritivite yache yata nagaradi gram, sarvatra prachara haibe moranam. That in every town and village across the globe, self-realization will spread. It will happen. It must happen. And he took that so seriously. It was such a conviction. It was so not distant. It was so not theoretical that he was willing to risk his life again and again and again to ensure that that would happen as swiftly as possible, and that he could take on responsibility on behalf of God himself, on behalf of Krishna, on behalf of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He just wanted to be a humble servant. I mean, it sounds really almost like a delusion of grandeur when we think about taking on responsibility for God. But it's not. If we do it in the right spirit, if we recognize I am nothing, I'm completely dependent on him to move me, and yet I have this desire. I want to serve intimately. I want to serve with all of my heart. I want to give everything I've got, everything that I've been given. It's not mine. I am part and parcel of God. Let me give it back. So that spirit is what Prabhupada exemplified. And he had this conviction that this can and must happen all over the world. Again, no restrictions. So that presents us with a certain opportunity. And I really, really pray that we can all take stock of this opportunity today and always. That, as I shared with you, we can become these candles that are lit up by the candles which are already lit. And in so doing, we have the extraordinary opportunity of lighting other candles, and not just one or two or three, but potentially helping in some way to light up the entire world. That sounds dramatic, but again, it was Prabhupada's conviction that carried this to a reality where now all over the planet, there are centers of ISKCON. That is crazy. He once spoke to a person on a park bench that was asking, so, what are you here for? What are you doing in this country? I believe this is when he was in New York City. And it was clear he didn't quite fit in, right? And he was talking about how he came to spread this Krishna consciousness movement to awaken souls. And the person was, inquiring, was interested. And Prabhupada shared, yes, we have 108 temples. And he said, oh, wow, that's unbelievable. Can I visit one? Prabhupada's reaction, yes, in course of time. What's that, Lakshmi Mani Prabhu? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
He said, it's just separated by time. He said, we have temples, we have schools, we have restaurants, we have farms, and they're just separated by time.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's just separated by time. That is it. Imagine that kind of conviction again. Ultimately, our life rests on our convictions, right? We have conviction that when I turn on the tap, water will come out and not some oil or something, right? We have conviction that we need to make a living. We have conviction that we need to have families or friends. We have all kinds of convictions, and our life hinges on those convictions. Imagine having the conviction that this awakening to who we really are can be spread everywhere, starting with us individually. So Prabhupada had his humble beginnings at 26 Second Avenue, the first center that he founded. And he was, he started a spiritual community out of just a ragtag crew, a motley crew of persons who had dropped out of society, hippies, persons, many of which were into drugs, and very few had jobs. Most of them were extremely young and didn't have a lot of life experience at all to go off of. And Prabhupada wanted to reach the leaders of society. He wanted to reach people that were very established in life and very influential. And what he found was something very different, but he always was grateful for whatever Krishna gave. He saw the opportunity in everything. And so when he was presented with the group of persons at his storefront of 26 Second Avenue that wanted to learn from him, he made the most of it. And what he did was, I'll never forget also this piece where he incorporated the organization at that time, which was just in New York City and was just a small crew, as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And many of the members who had just recently, they had just in that moment become members, they were saying, what? International Society? It seemed absurd, it seemed like it was laughable. International Society for Krishna Consciousness, look at us, look around. But again, it was just time that was separating. Prabhupada's conviction was so extraordinary. And even in material circles, you'll see people are constantly fixated on this idea of like believe in it, and then it will come. You know, if you will it into being, all of this stuff about the law of attraction and vision boarding and what's that?
The prosperity gospel.
Oh, the prosperity gospel, exactly. Yes. And in organizations, you know, we love leaders that have confidence, that have conviction, that put goals on the board and say, we are going to reach these goals, come hell or high water. We can do this. We will do it, right? But how deep do those run? And how much do even they believe in it? Or how much have they tested their beliefs? We work with organizations all the time, and I can tell you, if they do believe it, it's often because it's like, well, we have to, and we don't have much choice. It hardly runs very deep. So when we talk about someone like Srila Prabhupada, this is really off the charts. But we see that even in the worldly sense, there's a place for this. There's a wanting, a longing for it. The soul cannot be stopped, even from expressing itself in worldly ways, the refraction, the refracted way that it shows up. So Prabhupada took on the world by storm shortly after that, but it started in such a humble way where he was just cutting apples and distributing a slice to each person that showed up. And that was prasad, that was food that was offered with love to Krishna and was spiritualized by its being offered. And I mean, the way that he would cook for everybody at a certain point, and then he would wash all of the dishes and the pots, and he did it all by himself. And nobody initially thought to help out. It was a one-man show, and all the responsibility and all the trouble, all the burden rested on him, an old man. This is really something. But what happened was, people felt so loved, so cared for. They felt that there was a community to which they belonged. And the reason why the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has withstood as much as it has, and it has withstood a lot in a short amount of time, the reason that it still keeps going is because there is the foundation of these elements as exemplified by Srila Prabhupada, these building blocks, and that sense of investment in the goal and care for one another that are striving towards that goal. You know, you can't really ask somebody to do something that you're not willing to do unless there's an understanding that you're just better suited for it and I can't do it, so it's a compliment to you and I'm grateful to you, right? Prabhupada was he was leading by example all the time. He was a one-man spiritual community that then burned such a deep impression in people's hearts and minds that it expanded and it expanded and expanded, and a legacy came with that. And so then you have people like Bhakti Charu Maharaj who took on that legacy and leave their own legacy because they drank it up, because they didn't leave it at arm's length, because they didn't say maybe one day it would be nice to be self-realized. They determined that through the help of other practitioners on the spiritual path, I can advance to that highest goal, and I must, because there's no higher purpose. There's nothing better that I could live for than that. So it is electrifying to be in the presence of somebody like that, as I shared with you from my own experience. And that was the experience of all of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Again, we're so blessed to have two with us right now that continue for years and years and decades of devoted practice and setting such a high example because of being electrified by Srila Prabhupada. And now what happens is they share the wealth. That candle lights up other candles. That's the succession plan. That's what makes this work, and what makes that verse from the Chaitanya Bhagavat, that this can expand to every town and village, possible. So, I mean, there are havens of this. Bhakti Charu Maharaj created a spiritual community in Ujjain, India, which is the place where Krishna went to school as a little boy. It was the Gurukul, or the home of his guru. And he and his brother Balaram were being trained just out of humility and out of loving pastime. Krishna and Balaram, they even want knowledge. They want to be trained. They want to be part of a spiritual community, a sangha. And so he made this extraordinary spiritual community, which I have not experienced firsthand, but which I've heard so much about, and which I've experienced through the devotees who live there online in this time. And it's mesmerizing to me. And I've experienced other communities like it. I've experienced the Radha Gopinath temple of Radhanath Maharaj in Mumbai. And it's not a myth that spiritual community is possible even today. The opportunity that stands before us and what can happen here in ISKCON Ottawa and beyond is remarkable. There's nothing stopping us, really. It's continuing as we speak. So many people have been touched. So many more are being touched as we speak. This can happen, and it must happen. And if it's not us that will take up the mantle, it's going to be somebody else, because the Shastra proclaims it. Krishna says, this is my desire, and my desires get fulfilled, because the all-powerful can do anything. And he doesn't like to pretend that he can't. Well, maybe sometimes. Oftentimes but that's a different thing. That's for the flavor of relationship and his humility and sweetness. But really, it must happen. So if we don't want to participate, then we can be on the sidelines. But why not participate? What a glorious opportunity. What a glorious time we're living in. I'm a product of this, right? As I shared with you my own experience of meeting Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Prior to that, I had met Radhanath Maharaj when I was a student at New York University studying film and television. I didn't believe that it was possible to realize the soul. I didn't even believe there was such a thing as a soul. I thought that, we're all going to die, and we're going to die and that's it. Done, finished, sucks. Too bad. And then I meet somebody like Radhanath Maharaj, and it's like my insides are exploding, because suddenly I'm realizing that there's something beyond my own experience of life. This person knows something that I don't know, and is living in a way that I didn't even think anybody could live at. Like, it's impossible. I believed in this expression I'd been told by some Spanish friends, that the saints are all in the tombs, if it was ever possible, that's a thing for the past. Now we live in modernity. Now we have responsibilities, and we have fun, and eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. That is the mantra for today. I believed in that. But I had also read Soren Kierkegaard, who I believe was a very self-realized soul. And he also contributed to my path where I'm trying to awaken in huge ways, showed what is possible, and made me want to be a part of what Radhanath Maharaj was doing. And but to see the living, breathing example, to see it in the flesh, embodied, there's just no substitute for that. So it's a team effort. Self-realized souls throughout the ages have this team effort to bring us to our real selves. Between Kierkegaard and Radhanath Maharaj and my guru and Bhakti Charu Maharaj and all these great souls who are in this world right now, and who lived in previous ages There is no separation of time because the soul lives on. So the amazing thing is that we can break beyond our bounds. I once was told by a disciple of Radhanath Maharaj when I was deciding to become a brahmachari, a monk, and I was so terrified. I was so terrified because I was thinking, like, who am I to dedicate myself full time and be celibate and try to, like, oh my God, like, be not selfish and live in a room with people, like a whole bunch of people all at once. It just made no sense. And yet I felt really driven to that. And so I poured my heart out to this disciple, Govinda Prabhu, who lives in the Radha Gopinath community. And he told me, don't worry. He heard me out. He was so empathic. And he said, don't worry. Yes, I understand your conditioning. He didn't invalidate me. He said, yes, I understand what you're saying. I hear you. Thank you for sharing. But there is another conditioning, which is far deeper. And that is Krishna consciousness. That is the life breath of the soul, our connection with God. That conditioning is so deep that it trumps all others. And, our present paradigm that we feel locked in, and this sense of, oh my God, I wake up the next day with so much anxiety and I got to go through the daily grind again and again and again. That doesn't have to stay. And I know every time I speak to my guru, I feel like he's urging me, he's pleading with me to recognize that I don't have to stand still in my spiritual life, that I don't have to stay at my present position, that there's so much more to come. Just be patient and keep going and be really sincere and strong in your practice and in your connection through spiritual community. So it's important that we recognize that our inertia and our blasé, kind of dull consciousness that sets in, that we have to do something to counter that with our convictions. And then the rest is up to the blessings of great souls and up to the grace of God, that can and will be removed. And I can tell you from my own experience that I have come a long way. I know I've not come very far, but for me, I've come a long way. From that person who first met Radhanath Maharaj, I mean, I could go on and on about the different habits and different beliefs and outlooks and tendencies that by some grace have at least fallen to the background, if not completely by the wayside. That's really faith-giving. That's powerful. And I know many, many, many of you have experienced something of that. We have to take stock of that and the opportunity of what more is to come. So imagine what you could do for the world if you do take stock of that opportunity. There's a verse from the Gita which struck me early on in my path that speaks to this. Beautiful verse, 321, for those of you who are familiar with the sacred text. Yadyada charati shreshtas tad tad eve taro jana. Sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadanuvartate. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. One more time. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Bhagavad Gita 3:21. This is something of a teaser. It's something of Krishna speaking directly to us to say, if you are inspired by these great examples, and if you take it seriously, and you allow for succession planning to happen, if you don't crush the grand vision of these great souls, then we can also inherit that legacy. It is meant for us. It is not meant to be theoretical. It is not meant to die out. Yes, we are not so great right now. I am not so great right now. But one foot in front of the other, we keep going very sincerely, working on ourselves, seeing what am I missing, getting help, engaging with spiritual community, and amazing things happen. And Krishna bestows his grace more and more. The blessings of the great souls come more and more. The legacies get passed on. So are we ready to follow in the footsteps of those wise persons who've come before us? Are we ready to give up selfishness, to leave our egos behind, to serve from our hearts, to try to set examples ourselves? That's a real question. That's a real question. We have to ask ourselves that, because otherwise we're just kind of, as my guru would say, we're existing. We're not really living. We're just existing. And we exist in a spiritual organization, but we don't contribute enough. There are needs of a spiritual organization. And the primary need is the inspiration, the experience, all these building blocks, right? The introspection of its members, the knowledge of its members, the care of its members, the inspiration, and the experience. What is the use of a spiritual organization that doesn't possess those things? Prabhupada said about an institution that unfortunately suffered a lot of loss, very, very tragically, through the infighting. He said that it is dead. It's dead. There's not freshness. There's not newness. People are not writing their own realizations and sharing them. There has to be that aliveness. We have to be getting our own realizations and sharing them. That's why Prabhupada wanted for his disciples who were so young and so new, not to just play his classes, his talks, but to give their own talks. And they would think, well, what can I give that Prabhupada can't? Of course, that Prabhupada could give everything. But he wanted them to go deep into their realizations and to share them and to be alive. And when we have to speak, hopefully we realize that we have to be alive in what we're speaking. Otherwise, it's really a very unfortunate service. That is also my nightmare, that I put people through my talks that are not alive. That would be so painful. We have a responsibility. We have to contribute to a spiritual organization, to a spiritual community with our aliveness. So we can ask ourselves, if we have some doubts, well, what if I don't fit in? What if I don't fit into Krishna consciousness? What if I don't fit into ISKCON Ottawa? What if I don't fit into the subgroups here? What if I don't fit into some other aspect of spiritual community? That happens, and we should be honest with ourselves if we feel this way. It's not really helpful to suppress it. We should not be critical. We should not be blaming, but we should be honest with ourselves, and we should ask these questions so that we can work on it, figure out what's missing, what's not fitting in. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, one of my favorite sections of all is where Krishna makes it so clear that there is a home for everybody in his world. I mean, this is extraordinary. Krishna is who has the right to be so elitist, to invite only the self-realized souls. And ultimately, that is the case, that in the spiritual world, when we become self-realized, we can't go with selfishness. We can't go with even a tinge of selfishness. We have to be completely free of our egos, completely embodying the soul. So there is a kind of elite aspect, but along the way, Krishna is so compassionate. He is so filled with understanding and care and affection, and doesn't want to put anybody in a position of feeling discouraged. So he opens up and says, if you are at the highest level, if you're experiencing samadhi or full absorption in self-realization, beautiful, that is the goal. That's what I want. That's what I want for you. But if you can't do that, I understand. That is all right. Then just follow the practices that will lead you to that realization. Take up Krishna consciousness. Take up the teachings of the Gita in all earnestness. That's enough. And if you can't do that because you're feeling blocked and these things don't resonate with you, or there are too many other priorities, or it's just not, it's not possible for the present state, I understand. That's all right. Do what you can. And just work for me. Just try to offer something. I've given you talents, you have interests, you have passions. Engage them in my service. I will accept anything as long as it is done in a it will make the ground more fertile for Krishna consciousness to settle in. And so at least do that. And Krishna is saying, I mean, this is incredible. Krishna is saying, even if you leave me behind, even if you don't want to serve me at all, I still accept you. I still appreciate you. I'm still with you and I'm waiting for you. So there is a place for everybody. There is a place for everybody. There's a book by His Holiness Satswarup Maharaj, another dear disciple of Srila Prabhupada, who wrote his biography, and the condensed version, the abridged version, has a really beautiful title. He built a house in which the whole world can live. Another dear disciple of Srila Prabhupada, who is a mentor to my wife and I, Krishna Nandini Prabhu, she quotes this all the time in practically every interaction. She says, he built a house in which the whole world can live. This is so poignant. And if you think about the examples, Radhanath Maharaj, my guru, there is a devotee, Jayananda Prabhu, who was a disciple of Prabhupada that passed during Prabhupada's lifetime. And he would just engage people left and right in different kinds of service where they didn't even believe in any of the tenets of the Bhagavad Gita. He would just ask, can you help with something? Because he wanted them to work for Krishna. He wanted them to do something for Krishna that would benefit their soul according to where they were at. And he was so caring. He attracted so many people, so many self-realized souls that we have today came because of him. And so many others who never came into this spiritual community, they still were touched by him and remember him fondly. This is, I mean, these examples, Bhakti Chara Maharaj, can we really feel like we don't fit in when we're looking at these examples? We are souls. If we are with people that want to see us as souls, and we're genuinely striving and surrounding ourselves with people who are striving to see one another as dear to God, as souls, as brothers and sisters here, how can we not fit in? But we need to find the right people, because there will be others who challenge us. Of course, our egos are going to rebel. Other people's egos are going to clash with us. And we need what's called svajati, like-minded sangha, or connection with people who are on the same wavelength with us, so that we can be most inspired. But there is so much shelter and hope in the example of great souls. And if we dedicate ourselves to those examples, then we will get their blessings. We will follow in their footsteps. We will gain the treasures that they hold and are itching to impart to us. So in closing, what to do now? What can we do now? The world is in need. The time is now for we who are called together to take the legacy of great souls. We have now to take this legacy up. We are being called to do this together. And Prabhupada gave an analogy of a bundle of sticks that individually you can break a stick very easily. But together, bundled, you can't break it. It gives so much strength. And Prabhupada even said about those who are married and wanting to serve together, that the goal of that marriage is to give each other redoubled strength, because that is a kind of nuclear spiritual community. And it needs to expand outwardly. There's a great Christian pastor in Atlanta who inspires us a lot, Andy Stanley, who talks about exporting our relationships outward. And that has always been my goal. This is something very dear to us with Upbuild. You know, as I mentioned, it's our purpose to create spiritual community. So we want to export our relationships outward. That means we need to have very spiritual, very deep, enriching relationships. So I want for us to evaluate how we're doing on each of these building blocks of spiritual community, because we have a responsibility to give and receive the shelter of spiritual community. We have a responsibility. So we have to evaluate, how are we doing on each of these building blocks? What have I discovered currently in connection to each one? Introspection, knowledge, care, inspiration, and experience, right? What do I need to do? Introspection, think about going deep and ensuring that in this moment, you truly want to be who you are. In this moment, right now, you can do this anytime. And the answer needs to be consistent. It needs to be the same every time you do it. I want to be truly who I am right now. If that answer changes, we need to recalibrate before we do anything. So introspect. See how you're doing here. On the front of knowledge, immerse yourself in the teachings and the examples of those who are living as their real selves. That gives so much faith. That transmits things like the image of Mahaprabhu, right? The candle, lighting one after another. We need to be in touch with that. We need to be immersed in those teachings. And the care, surrounding yourself with the connection of those who are selfless, who are affectionate, who have the signature of being touched by other great souls. You can tell that they've been touched by other great souls. That's where we need to be. That's the care that we need to receive and what we want to give back, right? And then the inspiration. So again, those three will naturally result in inspiration. So we want to let the inner clarity of introspecting, the wisdom from going into that knowledge, and the love from the care of others to move us to serve others in this way. We want to pay that forward. What needs to happen for you to increase the lever on this? Do you serve with such clarity? Do you serve with that kind of clarity that I at least want to be so badly who I really am? Do you serve with that wisdom of being in touch with the Shastras and with the teachings of the great souls? Do you serve with that genuine affection, seeing these are all part and parcels of God? What do you need to do to increase the lever on that? And finally, the experience that results from that inspiration. This is the gateway. This is what opens everything up. And when we have that experience, we will know beyond all doubt, and we will begin to taste more and more that we are indeed souls. We are souls, and we cannot be convinced otherwise because it's incontrovertible. It's just not possible. We are part and parcel of Krishna. We are part and parcel of God. We will be unrestrictedly joyful from here to eternity. Nothing will get us down. This is what the world is craving. This is what the world needs so badly. There's so much unrest. There's so much suffering, disturbance, distraction. It's crazy. And the world is depending on those who are called and have the opportunity to awaken and to serve truly as souls. So when Bhakti Charu Maharaj passed, I felt so pained because I was thinking, even though I didn't have such a personal relationship with him, it signaled something to me. As His Grace Burijan Prabhu said, the world has become a darker place without him. And I felt so pained by that. And then Burijan Prabhu said this will usher in a decade of tears. And that's something which I had to shut down immediately. The sense of losing more great souls, it was too painful. I couldn't deal with it. And then I started through prayer and through the Sangha of other great souls, I started to see that, yes, all of this is tragic, it's painful, but there's another reality here. Nobody is going very far. Nobody is really going very far. We are the soul always. We are together always. And there is so much opportunity to carry the torch and to recognize the role that we get to play in this movement. And the urgency just increases and increases. I felt there was a signal coming from Bhakti Charu Maharaj. I really personally felt this, that we need to ready ourselves to take up these teachings in earnestness, to live this example, and to offer that outward. And we are totally dependent on the blessings of these great souls. We need to receive those blessings for this legacy to be expanded. We need to do them justice. So we are all being called right at this very moment, every one of us. We are all being called right at this moment. Will you spread the candlelight of this darkened planet? Will you spread the candlelight across this globe as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu desires, as he's asking, and as these great souls who've come after him are beckoning us? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Prabhu, for very wonderful, inspiring, with very nice recollections of the glorious personalities from Prabhupada. I mean, starting with Mahaprabhu and then down through Srila Prabhupada and Prabhupada's close disciples who have, by the grace of Srila Prabhupada and Mahaprabhu, exhibited exactly the qualities you are describing to us. So I think, personally, my thoughts are, I think I should reflect more on that, as you say, introspect myself a little bit more on this. And also, the very fundamental thing is being aware of every instant what I'm supposed to be doing, instead of doing things mechanically, which we are so much used to. So being aware of it, why am I doing it? Am I doing it right? I mean, question, if not all the time, at least very frequently, and I develop that habit of questioning myself, what am I doing? Why am I doing? So I guess that, will help me to really connect with what you just said. That maybe push me towards doing exactly, understanding these components and the building blocks you so nicely explained to us this evening.
I think one thing, as I was listening to your very inspirational pushing, and I had also heard from Burijan Prabhu about the decade of tears. And it's actually more than a decade. It's already started way before this decade. and it will continue, I think, probably more than 1 decade. But it always occurs to me, and I've spoken about it often, that any of these great souls, Bhakti Swami included, Satchidananda Swami included, Radhanath Swami included, if you ask them, when you first came into the Krishna consciousness movement, did you ever think that you were going to have such a leadership position, so many followers and big projects and whatever. Every one of them will say, no, I never thought that way. And yet these persons who came and didn't know anything, in many cases, some cases they knew something, but in many cases it was, like you said for yourself, it was an awakening to learn about the soul and to learn about who we are. And we were starting from a place which didn't really afford us with any prior qualification to make a big impact in the world of spiritual knowledge and through Prabhupada's teaching. And yet, by practice and dedication and seriousness and inspiration and association, many devotees have been able to inspire so many people and rise to positions that they never would have thought in a gazillion years that they would have had on their shoulders. That never would they think that way. So for each of us, we also have to consider that don't ever think you're nobody, because Krishna can make you everybody, and Krishna can empower you, Prabhupada can empower you to do magical things. So with that empowerment, you just have to do your part to take this position, whatever you're in, seriously, and then the rest is up to somebody else. You don't have to have a big grandeur plans to take over the universe. You just have to have plans to be a servant, and then when you become a servant, then Krishna does the rest. Bhakti Tirtha Swami used to say, we do our best and then Krishna does the rest.
That is so beautiful. Thank you. So realized and such a blessing for all of us. I can't, I find myself wanting to take your words to heart very deeply. And again, emphasizing this idea that really the only thing that's in our control is the desire. And the desire, the real desire, is simply to serve, completely free from ego. And as you said, no grandiose ideas. I mean, we should have visions. We should have vision. Prabhupada once said, my only disease is I cannot think small. And I find myself with a similar disease, and at the same time I'm very fallen, which Prabhupada was not. So there's always that that danger also, that if we don't recognize how fallen we are, how far away, that our big ideas can get us into a lot of trouble because the ego can run the show. But if we are able to recognize the only thing that matters is pleasing Krishna and just being a humble servant, then amazing things can happen, and they will never be exactly like our vision anyway. This Mandala Ram Prabhu, you wanted to share something?
I've been having a burning question for the past hour. And I think we're running out of time, but
yes, are we okay to?
Since all the devotees are here, just on the topic about setting goals for the community, and I think it's the most essential thing to have a thriving, healthy community. In Krishna consciousness, what is the actual best goal we should set for our community as a whole, or have that as the focal point that we should all be striving for? I don't know if there's, one certain gold standard thing that we should be going for, or it has to be variegated, but maybe you could just quickly give something for us that maybe we could strive toward.
One goal for a spiritual community? I would love to hear from Lakshmi Moni Prabhu and Guru Prasad Prabhu.
We'll have to make.
I know what Mandala Ram wants to hear, and it takes me back to Atlanta when Prabhupada was there with all the Sankirtan devotees in Atlanta. I think it was 1974, maybe even before that. And Prabhupada, the devotees asked Prabhupada, "What will make you happiest, Prabhupada?" And they were all thinking Prabhupada would say, "Distribute books." And Prabhupada answered, "Just become Krishna conscious." So, so I think that the number one goal for everybody in the community should be that somehow or other, whatever contribution we can make as an individual, because we're all individuals and we all have propensities, and we can help somehow or other to keep the wheels moving. The ILS a couple of years ago, not last ILS 2020, but the last one before that, 2018, we had that theme, keep the wheels moving. We had a train, a big train, where every one of us, Prabhupada gives that example, you know, where everybody on the train, the conductor and the train driver and the cleaning person and the person who collects the tickets, whatever, they all make the train move. So every one of us should do whatever we need to do to make the train move. That's what
Thank you. We'll have to in the discussion a little more, maybe.
What's that?
He wants more discussion.
Discuss more. Okay. Guru Prasad Prabhu, would you share something on this question?
Well, my humble opinion is what we are trying to do, let us do it, you know, a little bit better. Let us increase it a little bit more. So keep on doing it, trying to improve it a little bit, do a little bit more, keep on increasing both our quality and our quantity, whatever we are trying to serve in the community. And if it comes from every one of us, I think together we can achieve, you know, much better situation for all in the community.
I really appreciate that as well. That's so helpful. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would want to say on this is very much echoing what Lakshmi Moni Prabhu said, that, and this is kind of maybe a good end point. If there's one thing that we remember from this evening, let it be to check in with ourselves. It's the first step for every individual in a spiritual community is to make sure we're in the right place, that we know why we're here and that we really want to be here because we have the same shared goal. And that takes that we introspect and we say to ourselves, but we have to mean it. We can't like say it because it's the right thing to say, right? We have to mean it. I am absolutely eager to become who I truly am. I want to be the soul. I want to be a servant of Krishna. Then everything comes from that.
Haribo. Thank you much, Ruby.
Oh, glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Hey,
Thank
where's
you
your
so
wife?
much. Such a pleasure to be with you. Really, really.
Where's your wife?
Oh, my wife, she's hosting Toronto Ratha Yatra experience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's one of the organizers, so she will be she's with us in spirit, and she's given me blessings and a lot of inspiration for this talk.
Okay.
So if any other question, if a pressing question, otherwise I think our time is really
Yes,
close.
really.
We just exceeded. So I think maybe we should not make our special guest wait too long. I know that he's a very busy person.
No. I'm with you, but I don't want to keep you anymore. I wanting to release you.
Well, maybe if anybody has only one more question, because I don't want to take too much of other thing, because it can also keep dragging on. So we'll allow one more question, and probably people may also be busy with their own life. So if somebody has a very pressing question, they need to ask this question, here's an opportunity.
Krishna Prabhuji, this is Surendra. Can I ask a question? Yes, there is a...
Hare Krishna. Say your name once more.
My name is Surendra Prabhuji, and I'm here in Ottawa, and thank you very much. It was a very good class. You emphasize one point multiple times, is the ego. And I am taking that as a very strong bodily identification. So there are two aspects of it. Is first we have to, as Lakshmi Moni Mataji and Hariprasad Prabhuji and others said, is that first we have to maintain what we have, or stay where we are, which is our Krishna consciousness itself, and with that, which is means we have our own devotee community where we are all connected and maintain that relationship. Then we are well knit, which means is that we are together. We are not associating with unlike-minded people, so that the charge is never on a discharging side, which is very important. Then there's another aspect of going out. Out means it can start right from your family members. It doesn't mean just going on the streets. It means anybody who is not into this. So how do you see the balance between these two and maintaining the relationship and not getting affected and this ego factor? And there has to be line somewhere in the relationships.
Can you express it again in one sentence? That the balance between which two?
The community itself, where we are and we are living together, those who are all working for the same objective, which is on Ottawa, let's say. Then there are people outside this community who is minus ISKCON Ottawa. It could be anyone. It could be your family members, it could be book distribution outside, it could be anyone. How we should balance this and the ego problem and all those things. Where is the line here? What do you?
Well,
what is your opinion about it?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that it's important to recognize that this Sangha, this community, is it's our lifeline. It's what charges us up to serve outwardly. And perhaps there are others, maybe there are persons who are not part of this community that serve in the same capacity, and that is perfect. There's nothing wrong with that. That is right. But we want to make sure that we are connected to what inspires us, what will give us these building blocks that we spoke about, right? We want to be in an environment where we are introspecting, where we are gaining in knowledge, where we are receiving and expressing care, and therefore experiencing inspiration, which is building our own experience of self-realization. So that is the starting point. As the spiritualist and self-help guru Stephen Covey would say, put your big rocks in first, and then the small rocks will fit in between. But if you put the small rocks in first, there'll be no room for the big rocks. So we have to recognize that our inspiration in living the life of the soul has to come first. And then we'll see, what do we have room for? And that will allow us, this is also something C.S. Lewis, the great Christian writer, would say, a hero to me as well. He would say, when first things are put first, second things don't diminish but increase. So when you're in a spiritual relationship, when you're married, let's say, and you put God before your partner, that can seem like it's a bad deal and maybe the marriage won't work. But his point is that actually it doesn't diminish the relationship, it only increases it. Because when first things are put first, then everything is in its proper alignment, in its harmony, and it's fueling me. My relationship with God is fueling my relationship with my husband and wife. And so I'm drawing inspiration from that, and I'm pouring that inspiration into the relationship that's a service. So we want to look at it. We want to actually think about what are the key arenas in my life, and how do I make sure that I am positioned to best serve them. That means I need the inspiration, the building blocks that we talked about tonight. That comes first. Is that clear?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
Okay, good.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you all. Such a privilege to be with you. Thank you, Hariprasad Prabhu and Lakshmi Mani Prabhu. Thank you to my parents. I was excited to see Vraja and Krishna Dulal Prabhus and to be a part of your community. Thank you for letting me in.
Well, we want to thank you for kindly accepting and spend your evening with us and sharing deep insights. It's definitely worth reflecting again and again on this, and hope to see you again sometime soon. Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Sachinandra Swami ki jai. Sachinandra Swami ki jai.
Haribo.
Prabhupada ki jai.